Thousands of people in Iran in the streets. They want their country back, and for that brutal and repressive Islamist government to get out. In fact, it's not just a little brutal. It's already killed, that we know of, between 12,000 and 20,000 people. President Trump is weighing his options on how to respond to the slaughter. And a wide range varying from a direct military strike, a cyber attack, or other non-military approaches.
We've been told that the killing in Iran is stopping, and it's stopped, and it's stopping. And there's no plan for executions or an execution or executions. So I've been told that on good authority. We'll find out about it. I'm sure if it happens, we'll all be very upset.
A U.S.-based human rights group now says the regime has killed more than 2,600 people. So you see, these numbers are moving all over. We can tell you that other reporting has been different. Another report by an Iranian media outlet says that number is very much higher, closest to 20,000. Republican Senator Lindsey Graham says there's only one real option.
An attack on the regime is the only help it really matters. The bottom line is sooner rather than later, the people need to see what help on the way looks like, which is going after those who are killing them. If we can trade out the Ayatollah, a religious Nazi, a total evil man, for the good people out in the streets, it would be a great trade for the world, most importantly Iran, and for the United States.
Chief National Security Correspondent Jennifer Griffin with more. Jennifer.
Harris, we've just learned that the State Department has, in fact, put more sanctions on several entities in Iran. The Fardis prison, where many female political prisoners are held. Ali Larijani, who is the head of the Supreme Council on National Security, and 18 individuals or entities linked to a shadow banking sector network that has been laundering oil revenues for Iran. The U.S. military, as you mentioned, had presented options for the president to consider, but could not guarantee the regime would be overthrown. The president reportedly wanted assurances that any military action would be swift, decisive, and not lead to a wider war in the Middle East.
There are a lot of headlines out there that are, in my view, not accurate. President Trump's resolve is not the question. The question is, when we do an operation like this, should it be bigger or smaller? I'm in the camp of bigger. Time will tell. I'm hopeful and optimistic that the regime days are numbered.
So what would the president's military options look like? The U.S. military posture in the Middle East was not ready for a decisive strike. It had no aircraft carrier in the Middle East for the first time in years because the Pentagon ordered the USS Ford to the Caribbean. Yesterday, 2 aircraft carriers left San Diego and Norfolk to unknown destinations, and the USS Lincoln in the South China Sea may be repositioning to the Middle East, but would not be in position for about 2 weeks. Also, the U.S. returned one of its anti-missile batteries back to South Korea following last summer's strike on Iran's nuclear sites, which burned through a lot of interceptor missiles that have yet to be replaced. Military experts say the president still has a lot of firepower in the Middle East, to likely include an Ohio-class submarine capable of firing up to 154 Tomahawk missiles. Regime targets could include missile production and storage sites, oil refineries key to their economy, or go after some of the leaders themselves. This former U.S. Supreme Allied Commander recalls how Israel decapitated Hezbollah.
The Israelis use cyber attacks to bring leadership together so that they could bomb and kill the leadership. So there are multiple tools that can be used in different ways to cause these very same kinds of problems to this regime. And I believe we should be there. We should not only be attacking them in a cyber way, but we should be entering into the information warfare piece.
There are economic and cyber options at the president's disposal, Harris, including accelerating the collapse of the banking system that is keeping the regime and the IRGC and security forces funded. Harris.
That was so fascinating, the information warfare piece in all of this, because everything is interconnected with that. And as that gentleman said, it's time. Jennifer Griffin, thank you very much. In focus now, Steve Hilton, former top advisor to the UK Prime Minister David Cameron. Now, most of us know him as the Republican candidate for California governor, but he was at the top seat of government and foreign policy like this, and I want to know your take on how we deal with Iran, considering what's going on the ground.
Look, Harris, we all agree that this is a brutal authoritarian regime that's terrorizing its own people, and for so long before President Trump took such decisive action was terrorizing the world. But that doesn't mean you just blunder in there. And I do think some of that language we heard, particularly from Lindsey Graham, frankly, was somewhat ridiculous. It is not about bigger or smaller. It is about stronger and smarter. And thankfully, we've learned from the president's actions and leadership so far in this term, but also in his first term, two things: that he has restored strength and deterrence, but also that he's not reckless. He's not just going to run in somewhere and cause all sorts of mayhem to make a good, strong first impression. He thinks things through. The other thing we've learned, in particular in the last week or so, is that the US military and our intelligence services have extraordinary capabilities when led properly, as they are being now. You put all that together, and I think that the options are very clear for the kind of thing that President Trump will do to make sure that his word is taken seriously, as it already has been. The sanctions, exactly as Jennifer was talking about, the oil sanctions and the maximum pressure on this regime. The cyber is incredibly important so that the protesters can organize and keep going and the regime doesn't get the upper hand. But also remember covert operations that we may never even know about can actually have important role here. I'm very confident that the president is taking this soberly and seriously and will make sure that, as he has every single time up till now, the world knows that when he says something, he means it and will back it up.
Look, I don't want to gloss over the pictures on the left side of the screen, and they are from the last, weekend. They have shut down the radical Islamic government there in Iran has shut down the internet for its people. Elon Musk is addressing some of that with Starlink. But getting information, credible information, has been really difficult about what's actually happening to the people. It was, encouraging to hear President Trump say that he's hearing that there is less violence and people are no longer being executed, and that a 26-year-old who was next was not about to be executed. But we're watching very carefully for any slivers of info that we can get. Meanwhile, Washington Examiner editor-in-chief Hugo Gordon is asking, why aren't liberals standing in solidarity with the Iranian people? This is a great question. He writes this: there is a deafening silence on the left about Iran. So where are left-wingers whose pose is normally to be the moral conscience of the developed world and who rarely miss a chance to boast that they are on the side of the little guy? And oppressed people is demanding an end to autocracy with obvious justice, and left-wingers have not even chirped in solidarity? Your take.
Yeah. It's absolutely stunning. And I'm afraid, Harris, it's yet another example of that well-known affliction, TDS, Trump derangement syndrome. But look where it puts the left these days. Just because President Trump has made it clear that he is for the people in Iran and against the regime, now you see, because Trump's against the regime, the left here in America have to be for it and abandon the people. It is absolutely ludicrous. That's actually what's going on. They cannot bring themselves to support a movement, a popular movement against authoritarianism, because President Trump supports it too and has done powerfully and more strongly than their guy Obama ever did when this happened a decade or so ago.
Steve Hilton, great to have you in focus. Thank you.
Thank you, Harris.
Hey, everyone. I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kayleigh McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.